Intermittent fasting causes weight gain because you're eating too many calories. Now, you can stop the video or you can watch on and I'm going to explain a couple of things. I'm going to give you 3 tips to help you manage intermittent fasting better for weight loss. Now, the first thing is you have to understand is energy balance still matters, okay? Please, there's no two ways about it. No matter how many books are written by physios and chiropractors out there who have the word, who have doctor in their names, you need to understand that energy balance still matters. Thermodynamics, you cannot argue this. So if you eat more energy or more calories and take in more energy, you will gain weight. And what happens is you're intermittent fasting. So you're thinking, I'm starving, I'm restricting my energy intake, my calories. So when it comes to my feeding window, no matter what I eat, it's going to be just fine. But what you guys don't realize is the good tasting food like fats and carbs, they're quite calorie heavy, especially fats because they have 9 calories per gram, right? So you're going to end up eating quite a lot of that. And that's what causes most people's calories to overshoot. So when you're fasting all day, what's happening is you're starving yourself, your stomach will be rumbling, you're going to be thinking about food, and then it comes to the eating window. I don't really know anyone who's going to start with a chicken salad, right? It's very rare. You're going to eat something quite calorie heavy. And that is what causes people to end up gaining weight, especially if done over a prolonged period of time. So no matter what you think about intermittent fasting, at the end of the day, your calories still matter. Now, with that being said, how can you stop that from happening? Well, I'm going to give you 3 tips. All right, 3 tips to make sure that you don't overshoot your calories. Now, I want you to think about this for a second, right? Because when people are dieting generally and they follow, most females are guilty of this, right? 1,200 calories, Monday to Friday, they follow it, right? By the time it gets to Thursday or Friday, they're very hungry. And what happens at the weekend? Cheat day, cheat meal, right? And you end up overeating and you end up blowing the whole week out of proportion because you've gone from 1,000 to 1,200 to 2,500 to 3,000 at the weekend because you're so hungry, and it kind of resets everything, okay? Think about that. Now, the first thing, bit unorthodox, sparkling water, right? And this was popularized by a lot of YouTubers who spoke a lot about San Pellegrino water. No, you don't have to buy expensive carbonated drinks, right? A cheap, carbonated, sparkling, plain water from the supermarket is going to do the job for you. But when you have it, what happens? You have the carbonation effect, right? So you have that fullness in your stomach, and that's what causes people's appetite blunted. And I found it to be very helpful for me as well whenever I was going through my dieting phase, and I tend to get hungry at nighttime. So what I would do is after my meal, I would have one of those small 500 milliliter bottles of sparkling water. I just picked it up from Asda, and it was cold. That's a good tip, right? Have it cold because it just hits better. And what I noticed was I didn't have any cravings. The thing is, people forget I'm also a human being. Most coaches are human beings and we also get cravings. We just have a better toolbox, I guess, so we know how to manage it better. So I found that stopped me from craving sweets. So sparkling water is great. If you want, you can do diet drinks as well if you're not overly concerned about the sweeteners. But again, if you're having 2 or 3 a week, it's not going to kill you. But it's a great way to blunt your appetite. Number 2 is coffee. Again, you've seen this all online. Influencers speak about it, but a cup of black coffee is going to help with your appetite. For me, especially, it does. Whenever I want to go through periods of intermittent fasting, like from the morning to lunchtime, maybe, a cup of coffee or 2 does the job for me. And caffeine also blunts your appetite. So for me, what I tend to find is when I get up in the morning, I'll have a double espresso, and then I'll just have a cup of filtered coffee. Something about the process of making coffee kind of really, it's quite rewarding actually, and a bit therapeutic for me. So I have my first cup when I wake up, my double espresso, and then maybe around about 10 a.m. or 11, I'll have my second cup. I don't drink much coffee in the afternoons, and what I find is by the time I get to my feeding window, which for me right now, because I'm doing a little bit of intermittent fasting in preparation for the month of Ramadan, 1 or 2 p.m. works fine for me, and I'm not overly hungry, right? And I tend to find that I don't end up overeating or binging, so it works tremendously well. Number 3, and this again is quite popular, but very hard to do, and it sounds a little bit sad, but hear me out. Eating veggies before you have your main meal. Now, if you find that your fasting is getting to maybe 5 or 6 p.m. and you are very hungry, break your fast obviously with a tiny snack or something, but have veggies, right? Now, I'm not a huge fan of this generally because there's a lot of misinformation around it, but when you have veggies or kind of filler foods, volume eating people like to call it, you'll find that your stomach will get filled quite quickly, right? And if you find yourself, if you're someone who generally finds it very hard to manage your hunger, you're going to want to eat everything in sight, right? You ain't going to want to balance yourself and pace yourself, because I've been there myself. So whatever veggies you're having, which you should be having, whether it's a side salad or what have you, have that before you start your main meal. I promise you it's going to be wonderful, because what's going to happen is you're going to have it, and then whatever healthy or unhealthy food you've got there, you ain't going to be able to overeat on it because you've had quite a fair bit of volume in your stomach, okay? So have that salad, have the veggies, load up on it, take a break, have a bit of water. I know that doesn't sound appetizing and you're thinking, right, to hell with this, this is not helpful. Just friggin' try it. You'll find that when you have your main meal, you ain't going to be able to eat as much as you think. And that's what causes people to then slow down, and then they're going to eat slowly, which is what everyone should be doing. Digestion will be taken care of. You won't get heartburn or any gastric problems. And then it's going to mean your calories, which is the main thing for weight loss or weight gain, will be in check. And then afterwards, if you have a little craving for a snack, feel free, because you didn't overeat and you didn't overshoot your calories with your main meal. And by doing this, it's going to allow you to pace yourself. So 3 things I've mentioned there, all right? You've got sparkling water, which is going to help you blunt your appetite. Number 2, you've got black coffee if you need to. And then number 3, when you break your fast, just make sure you have lots of veggies and salads to open it. It's going to have that volume adding effect in your stomach, which means you're not going to be able to overeat. So if, for example, we deal with South Asians, so if you've, got samosa and spring rolls or pakora or whatever, very typical example, then you're not going to be able to eat as many because your stomach's going to be quite full. So intermittent fasting is a wonderful tool. I have nothing against it, but for a lot of people who think it helps them lose weight, but for a lot of people who are following it and they're gaining weight, it's not intermittent fasting causing cortisol to spike, although you do get a bit of cortisol occurring in the body. That's not the direct cause for fat gain, right? You got to understand this. When cortisol spikes, you get hungry. What happens when you get hungry? You eat more. It's as simple as that. But when it comes to weight gain, when you're doing intermittent fasting, whether it's intermittent fasting, dry fasting, or fasting in the month of Ramadan, it is all about energy. The amount of energy going into your body and the amount that you expend is going to dictate whether or not you get fat, okay? Because when you consume more, you create these fat stores. Some existing ones fill up, and that's when people start to panic thinking this is not for me, whereas it can be if you use it strategically. Now, if you found that helpful, I made a video on 5 cheat codes for weight loss. Yes, cheat codes. And I know there's about 1 million of these on YouTube. I made one specifically speaking to South Asian people. Watch this video before you go, and I promise you, okay, it's only around 8 or 9 minutes, but it's going to be incredibly helpful. And that combined with what you've watched just now is going to make you an absolute unstoppable beast when it comes to losing weight. So check that out before you go. And again, lots of freebies in the description as well. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you guys soon.